Today, we're talking about a technology that is quietly changing everything: synthetic data. And believe me, it's the answer to one of the biggest headaches in the entire digital world. So think about it. We live in a world that is absolutely hungry for data. But what do you do when the very thing you need to innovate, all that data, is also your biggest risk? How can you possibly build the future if you're constantly worried about privacy breaches, hidden biases, or what if you just don't have enough data to begin with? And that right there is the fundamental problem of our time. On one hand, you have the incredible promise of AI, which can push us forward in everything from healthcare to how we get around. But on the other hand, using real-world data is, well, it's dangerous. Every piece of information you collect could expose someone's privacy, or worse, it could just amplify the unfair biases that already exist in our society. It's a huge dilemma. So how do you get all the good stuff without the terrible downside? Well, the answer sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but it's very, very real. It's called synthetic data, and it just might be the most elegant solution to this whole mess. Okay, so what is it exactly? Synthetic data is data that's been artificially created by a computer. But here's the magic trick. It's not just random noise. It's been carefully designed to copy all the statistical patterns of a real data set. You can think of it like a perfect, privacy-safe clone. It holds all the valuable insights of the original, but without any of the actual sensitive personal info. And when you put them side by side, the advantages just pop right out. Real data, you have to collect it from the real world, which means the privacy risk is high, and you're stuck with however much you could get. Synthetic data, though, it's generated by an algorithm. That means the privacy risk is almost zero, and you can make as much as you want whenever you want it. It's basically data on demand. All right, this all sounds amazing, but you're probably asking, how in the world do you make data that's just like the real thing? Well, the process is actually pretty genius. So one of the most popular ways to do this is with a really clever system called a Generative Adversarial Network, or a GAN for short. The best way to think about it is like a game between an expert art forger and a brilliant detective. The forger, that's the generator, creates a fake piece of art. Then the detective, the discriminator, tries to spot if it's fake. The generator makes some data, the discriminator checks it against the real stuff and says, nope, try again. This happens over and over thousands of times, and the generator gets smarter and smarter until its fake data is so good, the expert detective can't tell the difference anymore. And hey, GANs are the famous ones, but they're not the only game in town. There are all sorts of other powerful ways to do this, from simple rule-based systems to other complex machine learning models, and even creating entire virtual worlds to simulate things like traffic patterns. Okay, so we know what it is, we know how it's made, so let's get to the good part. Where is this technology actually making a difference out there in the real world right now? Because the applications are already huge. And let me be clear, this isn't some niche idea stuck in a research lab. I mean, look at this. Synthetic data is already being used all over the economy. Healthcare, finance, insurance, the race to build self-driving cars, they're all jumping on this. Why? Because these fields all deal with super sensitive or super rare data. It's a perfect match. And if you want to really grasp the power here, just think about healthcare. Imagine being able to simulate 1,000 clinical trials for a new drug without needing a single real patient. Researchers can test all sorts of ideas on this artificial patient data, running experiments at a scale and speed that was totally impossible before, all while keeping real people completely safe. It's an absolute game changer for medical research. So, when you boil it all down, synthetic data really solves three massive problems. 1, it helps us get over data scarcity. We can just make more. 2, it lets us safely practice for those super rare but super important events, like a crazy driving scenario for a self-driving car. And 3, this is a big one. It helps companies build amazing new things while staying on the right side of tough privacy laws like GDPR and HIPAA. But of course, it's not all perfect. With this kind of power, you've got to ask the hard questions. And the biggest one is, can we really truly trust data that was made up by a machine? This is where we get to the ethical tightrope we have to walk. And this quote right here, it absolutely hits the nail on the head. You have to remember, synthetic data learns from real data. So if our real-world data is already full of our own human biases about race or gender, well, all that junk gets baked right into the synthetic version. It's the classic problem, garbage in, garbage out. This bias can sneak in through a couple of backdoors. First, you've got selection bias. If the data you started with wasn't a good reflection of the real world, say you mostly collected data from one group of people, then your synthetic data is going to be skewed from the start. Then you have algorithmic bias, where the computer process itself can accidentally amplify those flaws. And that's really dangerous, because you could end up with AI that's making unfair decisions about who gets a job or a loan. Now, even with these big ethical questions, which, by the way, brilliant people are working on like crazy, the future for synthetic data is, well, it's undeniable, and it is going to be massive. Let's just talk about the money for a second, because it tells you everything you need to know. By 2032, this market is expected to be worth almost $4 billion. A number that big tells you this isn't just a small trend. This is a fundamental change in how we think about data. But honestly, that final number doesn't even tell the whole story. Look at the speed of this growth. We're going from under 300 million in 2023 to over 2 billion just 5 years later, and then nearly doubling again. That's a growth rate of over 33% a year. That's not just growth, that's a technological gold rush. And no surprise here, the biggest names in tech are the ones leading the charge. You've got your heavy hitters, Microsoft, IBM, NVIDIA, all pouring tons of money into this, building the tools that are making it all happen. They aren't just in the market, they're actively creating it. And so we end on this one last thought. The technology to create nearly perfect, limitless, and private data is here, and it's taking off like a rocket. The real challenge from here on out isn't just about making the tech better. It's about us being careful, being intentional. As we get better and better at creating this perfect data, the question we all have to answer is, how do we make sure it helps us build a more perfect world? Thanks for listening.